What's up guys, my name is Mackie and today I want to talk about some Far Cry 5. I've seen a lot of information out there since the game's launch that's just flat wrong, and I wanted to try and set the record straight for anybody new to the game or just looking for a better kit for harder difficulties. There are tons and tons of weapons in this game, but the truth is, they aren't all created equally. They are not equally effective, they do not fill equal roles, and they are not going to be equally useful for most of the circumstances you're going to encounter while playing. I would even go so far as to say that most of them aren't even equally fun to play with. Most of the game's weapons are serviceable. You could clear the entire game, especially the easier difficulties, using any of them. For the next couple minutes, I'm going to go over the loadout that I most often use and why I chose the weapons that I did. I'm going to preface all of this by acknowledging that of course not all people have the same playstyle, nor will they take the same approach throughout the game. With that in mind, I still think that this loadout provides enough versatility to clear all the game's available content, and you're always going to have the tool you need for the job at hand. Alright, let's kick this off by taking a look at shotguns. They are, without a doubt, one of the most important weapon classes in the game, and Jesus Christ are they satisfying to use. According to their charts, each shotgun in the game supposedly does equal damage. That may be true on paper, but I've found that it fluctuates somewhat wildly based on a handful of factors. For instance, when regarding shotguns specifically, the accuracy stat controls bullet spread, while the range stat dictates damage fall off over distance. Together, these two traits can cause damage per shot to vary severely, which becomes more and more noticeable on higher difficulties as enemies become more difficult to kill. Because of this, two of the shotguns rise definitively to the top: the double-barreled SBS and the semi-automatic SPAS 12. The SBS offers the highest range and accuracy in its class, making it equally lethal at mid-range as it is up close and personal. This thing is pretty gnarly for the price you'll pay, available very early in the game for only $2,100. It has more reliable damage because of its more versatile effective range at the cost of having to quickly reload after every other shot. The SPAS 12 on the other hand is almost its polar opposite. Its damage is more sporadic past 20-ish meters, offering less penetration, but is capable of firing a full 9 shots before a lengthy reload when equipped with the right attachments. Even with the shotgun perks unlocked, the reload can be noticeably painful when you're stuck out of cover. The answer to which of these weapons is more useful is the SPAS 12. Even with its drawbacks, this is definitive due to how the game typically unfolds. Players are going to be surrounded by large groups of enemies in close range literally all of the time in this game. Whether it be while capturing outposts or being rushed by a surprise patrol, having sustainable close range damage is going to be necessary far more often than heavy bursts at mid-range. If there were more bullet sponge enemies in the game, this really might have gone the other way, but more often than not, the extra damage and penetration at range from the SBS isn't needed. When you add the SPAS 12's ability to attach a suppressor and an extended magazine, it isn't even close. Both weapons can attach sights and fire incendiary shells and armor-piercing slugs, but the utility offered by the extended mag and suppressor simply can't be understated. The standard SPAS 12 isn't unlocked until halfway through the game, but you can spend the in-game cash on the flameout variant right from the get-go. Aside from being absurdly powerful, this gun is just flat out fun to use. The gunplay in this game is already top tier, and blowing your way through a field full of cultists with this guy really brings that to the forefront. Moving on, let's do a 180 and talk about stealth options. Stealth can oftentimes be ignored on the lowest difficulty, otherwise it is extremely useful and can really help thin the herd before mopping up the remainder of an outpost. I've found that of the paths available, either having a suppressed 1911 or a bow are the most effective options. Of the two available bows, the recurve is the better both on paper and in practical use. The problem that arises when filling your kit is that the recurve bow isn't available until 5 resistance levels have been earned, and in this case there isn't a way around that. At the time of this recording, there are no recurve bows to be found naturally in-game, and it doesn't have a skin variant available for purchase. This being the case, I would strongly advise that players use the suppressed 1911 up until the point you can purchase the recurve and then make the switch from there. You could also opt for the compound bow during the early game, but despite how similar it is to the recurve, I prefer the pistol. If you do decide to use the pistol, you should be aware that suppressors can behave a little strangely at times, sometimes even immediately triggering enemies to go into alert mode. I found the best way to navigate this is to take a high vantage point with clear sight lines and shoot for headshots at about 30 to 40 meters, being very careful not to miss. If you choose isolated targets or wait for them to walk around alone, you can clear a huge swathe of enemies before anyone even knows you're there. The 1911 is perfect for this because it makes very little noise in comparison to rifles, even with suppressors, and stays accurate at mid to long range. Once you can unlock the recurve though, it should definitely be your stealth go-to. You can afford to get much closer with this while staying silent, and it does very good damage, immediately killing normal cultists most of the time, no matter where you hit them, and will one-shot almost all other variant cultists as long as you stick them in the head. With a little bit of finesse, you can drop little slivers of death all over the Montana countryside with none being the wiser. And it's a very good tool to use if you want the no alarm and undetected cash bonuses from clearing outposts. Those bonuses can get rather large rather quickly, and the game doesn't even tell you that they exist until you earn them. Make sure you attach the marksman's sight and arrows stay deadly at range, with very predictable drop patterns after a bit of practice. Another added bonus is that the incendiary arrows are incredibly useful at zoning enemies, and the explosive arrows can easily provide a primary method for destroying vehicles if you opt out of including a rocket launcher in your kit. I can't stress enough how important it can be to include this sort of versatility. It really does need to be a staple in your loadout. The bows behave very differently in comparison to more conventional weapons, so don't be discouraged if you have to force yourself to use it until you love it. Trust me, eventually you will. A side effect of dropping the 1911 for the bow to fulfill stealth needs is that it frees up your sidearm slot for something more useful, like the Scorpion SMG. In Far Cry 5, the Scorpion is a small machine pistol, capable of filling your sidearm slot as somewhat of a flex pick that complements the rest of your kit. By all accounts, this thing really should be horrible. Its chart shows that its accuracy, damage, and range are all abysmal, made up for somewhat by its insane rate of fire and handling ability. Adding a suppressor, extended mag, and sight can bump these stats a bit, but not by much. This weapon single-handedly makes me question whether the weapon charts in game should be trusted though, because the Scorpion behaves nothing like its chart says it should. It throws out really easy headshots with damage seemingly on par with the 1911 if you tap the trigger or use its burst fire functionality, while also having the utility to perform exceptionally well at close range when going full auto. The real beauty of this weapon becomes apparent anytime you have to shoot while driving. Because of its insane rate of fire, its spray pattern almost looks like a laser, making the action of sweeping for headshots much easier when you don't have time to line up a shot. It also has a substantial magazine size in comparison to other pistols, making it not only my favorite sidearm in Far Cry 5, but one of the most fun to use in any modern shooter. There is one other option worth mentioning in this category, but it needs a qualifier first as to why I even bring it up. Sniper rifles in this game are terrible. Seriously, they are the worst. I really do wish this wasn't the case, but unfortunately it is. They are objectively less useful than any other weapon class in the game, and if I was forced to choose between one or being able to carry a second slot full of shovels, I would absolutely take the shovels. They really serve no utility because they suffer from standard bullet drop, exacerbated at range, and one of the slowest projectile speeds in the game, causing them to be completely worthless on anything moving faster than standing absolutely still. In addition, their damage is comparable to other rifles, so it shouldn't be considered a factor to cover for their faults. Even the most versatile of them, the ARCL with its alternate firing modes, is so incredibly inaccurate when not using single shot that it just comes across as tragic. The end result here is that the 44 Magnum and both its 6er and cannon variants are artificially made more valuable. They are really nothing spectacular on their own, but they do have the single saving grace of being able to attach the most powerful scopes in the game, allowing them to maintain their above average damage over dramatically increased ranges, provided you're trying for headshots. They do inherit some bullet drop, but being able to stuff the utility of a traditional sniping weapon into a sidearm slot is just generally too good for me to not at least bring up here. Sniping in this game isn't incredibly useful at all, but for the odd bounty hunter mission where you have to kill a specific target, this will really shine. After all we've covered so far, we have a single primary weapon slot available to us after perks, and here you'd be well served by including something useful across all ranges. I most often find myself slotting one of the AK-47 variants in this spot, typically the AK-MS, just because I like the more modernized look of it. Statistically, they are identical. A lot of the review sites, IGN, PC Gamer, Segment Next, etc., will tell players that the ARC should be your go-to rifle. I guarantee the people who write these articles have either A, not spent enough time playing the game, or B, have simply never picked up the AK. The AK does significantly more damage per round in comparison, and while its rate of fire is marginally lower, I can promise you that its recoil is far easier to manage despite what the accuracy ratings on each rifle are. I have no idea why this is the way it is, but I assure you, it is the way it is. With the extended mag, suppressor, and a reflex sight, this rifle becomes a viable answer to every problem the game can throw your way. It, like the ARC and ARCL, has the ability to switch between single shot, burst fire, and fully automatic profiles. You can get either AK variant early through purchasing its prestige skin, and just like no child soldier cosplay is complete without one, neither is your loadout. There are only two other weapons that I would ever advise you take instead of the ones that we've covered, and I would only use them situationally. You can swap them out as you see fit, but I would keep the choices above listed as your standard fare total chaos arsenal. First up is the option to replace your AK with the M249 LMG. This is something I would do specifically after taking both the LMG reload and handling perk and the vehicle buster perk. The former for obvious reasons, and the latter for the wholesale, unfeeling destruction of all mechanical contraptions thrown against you, of which the game will offer many at various times. With this combination, the M249 is capable of mowing down fields of enemies at a time, regardless of their armor or protections, and is capable of sustained fire for literally a full 15 seconds before the need to reload. This may sound like a long time, but wait until you actually have the opportunity and need to do it, and it will feel like an eternity. And good lord will it feel good to have the option. The other choice fulfills a very similar need, and that is the RAT4 guided launcher. Not only does it provide the obvious utility and entertainment benefits of being a rocket launcher, if you fit it with its only available scope, it gains the ability to lock onto moving targets, oftentimes an invaluable trait when taking heavy fire from multiple directions. The cherry on top is that even before the lock is active, the missile will trail wherever you're currently aiming, something not immediately obvious in game, and making you capable of performing some pretty outstanding trick shots to nail enemies behind buildings or just below the tree line. I would recommend that this take the slot of your recurve bow if you do take it, since you're unlikely to be needing them both at the same time. For the reasons we've outlined in this video, I strongly believe these weapons to be objectively better than anything else on offer. While that may be the case, there are some special mentions that can not only add some flavor on top, but put the fun back in functionality. Naturally, I'm talking about your trusted friend and confidant, the shovel. It is immeasurably fun to sneak up and smack a wacko cultist in the noggin with, and that even pales in comparison to the satisfaction of hurling it, spear-like, through the air, and sinking it into an enemy's chest with a beautifully resounding thud. Add in the fact that you get 9 of them to throw at a time and nearly almost equal 1 kill per throw, and you're going to spend an embarrassingly long amount of time with this thing in hand. Trust me, you're going to dig it. Another thing to keep in mind is the consumables you're capable of crafting. They are incredibly easy to forget about. You may have to actively remind yourself that they even exist at all, but when you do use them, they turn you into a god for their duration. Seriously, for intense fun, I would recommend once every 30 minutes or so consuming one of each of them and then pulling out that shovel for a romp around the mountain. Don't forget to add in a healthy mix of your throwable explosives, knives, and molotovs for extra fun. Well folks, that about covers it. I very much appreciate you sticking through until the end. I'm really wanting to make a very serious go of creating this sort of content and would love to hear from you guys about your thoughts or what you might want to see covered in the future. Like and subscribe if you're interested, and I will see you guys next time.